In the cold silence of the galaxy, the story of humanity was nothing more than a minor footnote, barely spoken among the elder races who ruled the stars. They dismissed Earth as a backwater world, its people fractious, chaotic, and bound to the gravity well of a single planet. They cataloged humans as an undeveloped species, violent perhaps, but insignificant in the scale of civilizations that span hundreds of systems. When the coalition of great empires decided that humanity was a potential nuisance to expansion, they chose eradication over negotiation. It was not the first time they had culled a lesser race, and it would not be the last. Or so they believed. The decision was made in sterile chambers, with no emotion, only logic. Humanity had shown signs of rapid technological growth. They had begun to launch crewed ships beyond their home system. They had built weapons that could scar continents. To the alien minds, that was enough evidence that humanity could one day resist. And so fleets were prepared, massive and terrible, weapons polished for swift extermination. There was no doubt in their minds. Humans would fall screaming, begging for mercy that would never come. Entire histories of exterminations stood behind the coalition's certainty. They had erased species that had lived for 1,000,000 years, that had carved cities from asteroids, that had sung to the stars. Humanity, in comparison, was barely crawling from its cradle. The armadas came without warning. They cut into the solar system like knives through flesh. Cities on Earth lit up under the first bombardments. Sky turned to fire, towers falling into oceans of flame. The aliens expected panic, capitulation, a pleading for terms. They miscalculated. The first mistake was assuming that fear would break humanity. It did not. In the ruins of burning cities, men and women picked up what they had left. Old rifles, scavenged explosives, sharpened metal, and fought back. They were not soldiers trained for interstellar conflict, yet they moved with the instincts of predators who had lived their entire history in blood. Humanity was not civilized in the way the coalition defined civilization. They were something older, rawer, and infinitely more dangerous. The aliens saw resistance as a nuisance at first. Isolated cells, desperate acts, bodies thrown into plasma fire with no chance of survival. Yet the nuisance spread. Every street became a battlefield. Every forest hid hunters. Every ruined factory was reborn as a warforge, creating weapons not seen before. Alien patrols disappeared in the night, their bodies left torn apart as warnings. For every human that died, 2 more rose from the ashes, carrying the fury of the fallen. The coalition could not understand it. Other races had surrendered at the first sign of orbital bombardment. They had cowered when towers fell. Humans did not cower. They bared their teeth. The coalition misjudged another truth. Humanity's history was violence. Before the stars, they had drowned in their own blood. Empires had risen, fallen. Wars had swept continents. Cities had been annihilated by fire and steel. Genocide was not a foreign concept to humans. It was woven into their evolution. They had lived with the knowledge that survival was not guaranteed, and they had adapted by becoming the most ruthless survivors imaginable. When the aliens bombed cities, humanity saw only another war, and wars were something they understood better than peace. The first alien casualties came quickly. A patrol ship landed outside a ruined settlement, hunting survivors. It did not rise again. Its hull was breached with weapons the aliens did not recognize, and its crew was found shredded, stripped of their tools and armor. In the forests of Asia, a squad vanished, leaving only blood on the leaves and their rifles gone. In the ruins of Europe, convoys were ambushed by firebombs thrown from rooftops. The aliens laughed at first, dismissing the resistance as primitive chaos. But chaos has its own order, and it spread faster than their machines could track. The humans had learned how to kill with nothing. With alien technology in their hands, they became something else entirely. The coalition underestimated human curiosity and ingenuity. Within weeks, stolen weapons were turned against their owners. Broken devices were studied, dismantled, reassembled with crude human engineering until they functioned. In workshops lit by candlelight, scientists and soldiers worked side by side, hacking alien drones and converting them into bombs. Children carried messages through the ruins. Farmers laid mines. Hackers breached systems thought impregnable. The aliens began to lose control of their own machines, watching in horror as drones turned on their masters, ships detonated mid-flight. Codes were rewritten by minds that should not have been capable of such leaps. Fear spread slowly among the invaders. They began to whisper the humans as cursed, as relentless, as demons that did not sleep. They saw comrades drag into shadows and never return. They saw fire consume their camps, heard screams echo through tunnels where humans hunted them like prey. The Coalition had never fought prey that hunted back. Every species before had broken under the weight of orbital fire. But humans treated orbital fire as weather to endure. Entire regions turned into ashlands, yet survivors walked through them with burned skin, carrying rifles and stolen plasma cannons, refusing to kneel. Reports reached alien high command that entire divisions were disappearing in cities they had already declared pacified. They did not understand that humans thrived in ruins. A broken city to the Coalition was a defeat. To humans, it was cover. Streets turned into mazes of death, subways into warrens or ambush, collapsed buildings into traps. They had evolved in caves, in forests, in deserts, in tundra. No environment defeated them. Instead, every environment became a weapon. The Coalition soldiers, bred for clean wars and perfect logistics, could not comprehend enemies who fought with dirt, shadows, and the sheer will to endure starvation, disease, and fire if it meant killing one more invader. Alien commanders increased bombardments, thinking to break the human will. They glassed swathes of land, reduced oceans to boiling fields of death. Still the humans came, scarred and furious, carrying shrapnel in their bodies, but moving forward with eyes that promised vengeance. It was not rational. It was not the way wars were meant to be fought. It was something else, something feral and ancient. The Coalition began to lose officers to assassination, entire camps to midnight raids. They woke to find their supplies poisoned, their weapons stolen, their allies vanished. The humans learned quickly, but worse, they adapted immediately. A tactic that failed once was never repeated. A tactic that succeeded spread across continents in hours. The Coalition's arrogance began to crumble. The war was meant to be swift, yet months passed with no victory. Instead of submission, they faced escalation. Instead of despair, they faced defiance that grew sharper with every act of cruelty. They began to ask themselves questions they had never asked before. What if extermination was not possible? What if the humans could not be broken? What if they had made a mistake greater than any in their history? The war that was meant to end humanity became the war that reshaped the galaxy. What had begun as a campaign of extermination turned into a struggle for survival that the Coalition had never experienced before. Where they had expected obedience, they found defiance. Where they had planned a clean sweep, they encountered endless resistance. As Earth burned, humanity transformed. The first strikes had been desperate, improvised, driven by rage. But desperation soon became strategy, and scattered fury became organized war. What had started as resistance grew into a counteroffensive, and every alien commander who had once spoken of easy victory now whispered disaster. The Coalition fleets tightened their grip, determined to choke Earth into submission. They launched fresh waves of soldiers, expanded their zones of bombardment, and brought in weapons designed to end entire biomes. Yet the more force they used, the more humanity adapted. Every bombardment created new terrain for ambush. Every scorched plain became a minefield. Every destroyed city turned into a labyrinth that consumed alien patrols whole. Humans learned faster than their enemies could predict, and the learning curve of their species was a weapon deadlier than any fleet. Captured weapons no longer stayed captured. They were stripped, studied, and rebuilt. Engineers with no formal training turned alien rifles into mass-produced hybrids. Farmers forged armor from the wreckage of drones. Entire communities became factories of war, hidden underground, connected by networks that the Coalition sensors failed to detect. Human hackers burrowed into alien systems, rewriting code with primitive equipment that should not have breached firewalls built over millennia. Within months, alien ships found their targeting systems failing mid-battle. Their supply chains rerouted into human-controlled zones, their surveillance drones turning against them. The Coalition soldiers began to fear the night. They had once marched proudly, armored in weapons beyond human comprehension. But armor meant nothing against an enemy that did not stop. Humans struck without rhythm or pattern. Sometimes a lone sniper erased a commander. Sometimes entire convoys vanished into firestorms triggered by hidden explosives. Other times, silence itself was a weapon, luring alien patrols into darkness where none returned. Fear is a contagion, and it spread through their ranks like fire in dry grass. By the time officers realized the infection of terror was spreading, it was too late. Their soldiers hesitated at shadows, flinched at whispers, and fired blindly at the dark. What the coalition failed to comprehend was that humans did not fight as individuals. They fought as a species with memory written in blood. Their ancestors had starved, frozen, drowned, burned, and still endured. To them, pain was familiar. To them, loss was fuel. No soldier fought alone, for behind each stood generations of survival carved into instinct. Humanity's unity had never been perfect, but war burned away division. Nations that had once threatened one another with nuclear fire now shared stolen alien weapons. Rivals became allies. Enemies became brothers in arms. Humanity became one, and unity forged in fire was stronger than any empire. The first great victories came not from fleets or armies, but from whispers of terror. In the deserts, humans lured armored columns into mirages of heat, then buried them in shifting sands rigged with mines. In the tundra, they froze invaders in blizzards that shorted their machines and left their corpses as monuments of failure. In the ruins of cities, humans built fortresses of rubble, turning collapsed towers into artillery platforms. Every environment became an ally. The planet itself seemed to fight beside its children, guided by hands that knew every storm, every cave, every current. The coalition attempted to adapt, sending new waves of specialists bred for attrition. They underestimated again. Attrition was humanity's natural element. Starvation did not break them. Disease did not stop them, and hopeless odds did not bend them. They scavenged food from wastelands, built medicine from scraps, and used the bones of their dead as reminders of what remained to be done. Attrition that should have ended resistance only hardened it. Alien generals began to whisper that the humans were not fighting for survival. They were fighting for dominance. The war spread to the skies. Humanity's first attempts at seizing ships had been reckless, almost suicidal. But suicide missions had yielded results, and results became lessons. Boarding actions turned into operations, and operations into campaigns. Small vessels were hijacked, studied, and repurposed. With every captured ship, humans learned to fight in the void. Their crude rockets became guided weapons. Their satellites became weapons of surveillance and sabotage. Their fledgling space stations turned into command posts for raids beyond Earth. The coalition, which had sought to contain humanity within their atmosphere, now found themselves bleeding in orbit. The first alien fleet destroyed by human hands was meant to be a display of power. It became a display of weakness. Through a coordinated assault of hacked drones, sabotaged targeting systems, and suicidal boarding attacks, humans reduced a squadron to wreckage. The news spread faster than light, not through channels the coalition controlled, but through rumor and fear. For the first time in centuries, the coalition had lost a fleet, and the ones responsible were the species they had called insignificant. The coalition tried to censor the truth, but whispers cannot be erased when they are carried by terror. Soldiers spoke of humans who fought with no regard for their own lives, who tore armor veterans apart with knives when rifles failed, who laughed as they set fire to themselves just to drag enemies into death. Commanders reported that morale was collapsing. What use was advanced armor when it only made you a brighter target for human fury? What value was superior firepower when the enemy charged anyway, accepting death as victory if it meant one more alien body on the ground? Humanity's brutality was not random. It was methodical. They understood fear as a weapon and wielded it with precision. Corpses of aliens were displayed in patterns, messages written in blood across walls of ruined cities. Camps were infiltrated, their occupants slaughtered silently, the bodies left untouched so the discovery itself became the wound. Entire battalions began to collapse not because they were destroyed, but because they refused to march into places where humans had been seen. The coalition had never fought an enemy that turned war into a psychological hunt. They began to see humans not as prey, not as soldiers, but as predators stalking every shadow. The shift in balance became undeniable. Where once the coalition advanced, now they retreated. Where once they set traps, now they fell into them. Humanity's weapons, crude at first, grew sophisticated with terrifying speed. Plasma rifles modified to carry greater charge. Drones reprogrammed into autonomous hunters. Warships hijacked and refitted with nuclear cores. Within a single year, humanity leapt across centuries of technology, not by invention, but by theft and savage creativity. What other species took generations to master, humanity absorbed in months. Their capacity to learn and adapt became the ultimate weapon, more dangerous than any fleet or bomb.